It was 3:17 in the morning when I heard the knock. Not a soft tap, not a hesitant shuffle, but 3 firm, measured raps that cut through the hum of the rain like a court summons. I'd just woken from a dream about the house I grew up in, the one with the creaky maple floors and the back door that never latched right. In the dream, I was 17 again, standing on the porch in soaked pajamas, watching my father's silhouette retreat into the hallway without a backward glance. The memory still had teeth, but that was 15 years ago, and this was now. I opened the door barefoot, robe cinched tight, the hallway light casting a long shadow behind me. Standing on my porch was a man I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, my Uncle Ray, my father's younger brother. Except Ray wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman I didn't recognize, mid-50s, hair slicked back from the rain, holding a manila envelope like it might dissolve if she squeezed too hard. And between them, leaning on a cane, thinner than I remembered, eyes bloodshot but sharp, was my father. He didn't say my name, didn't smile, didn't even look me in the eye. Instead, he stared at the peeling paint on my doorframe, the same shade of sage green I'd chosen after I bought this house with money I earned waiting tables, then teaching, then finally running my own small consulting firm. He looked like a man trying to place a face in a crowd, not a daughter he'd disowned. "She's here," Ray said, his voice low, almost apologetic. I hadn't seen him since the day he slipped me 2 20s and a peanut butter sandwich when I was sleeping in my car behind the laundromat. That was the last act of kindness anyone in that family had shown me. The woman stepped forward slightly. "Ms. Carter," she asked, though she already knew, "we have something for you." She held out the envelope. I didn't take it, not yet. 15 years ago, my father threw me out over a secret. My discovery that he'd been siphoning funds from his own company, laundering money through fake vendors and lying to everyone, including my mother. When I told her, she wept and said, "Don't tell anyone. He'll ruin us." But I couldn't unsee the ledgers. I couldn't unhear his phone calls, so I confronted him. And he looked at me like I was a stranger who'd broken into his life. "You're not my daughter anymore," he said, and slammed the door so hard the photos on the wall shook. Now here he was, on my porch in the rain, needing something. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, something else, something urgent. I finally reached for the envelope. My fingers brushed the damp paper, and I felt the weight of it, not just paper, but consequence. The return address was a law firm I'd never heard of, but the handwritten note on the front chilled me, for the daughter they disowned. Open only with legal counsel present. My father cleared his throat. We need you to read it," he said, voice cracking. "It's about your mother." But the signature at the bottom of the letter inside wasn't his. It was hers, dated 3 weeks before she died. And it began with 2 words I never thought I'd see again. I knew I didn't say anything when they left. I just closed the door. Let the rain drum against the glass. Let the silence settle like dust on an old bookshelf, thick, heavy, waiting to be disturbed. I didn't cry, not then. Not when I sat down on the floor with the envelope in my lap, still damp from the night, still smelling like wet wool and regret. I didn't scream. I didn't throw it across the room. I just sat. And I thought about all the times I'd imagined this moment. Not like this. Not with him standing there, bent and trembling, like a man who'd spent 15 years running from himself only to find he'd run into a wall with my name on it. I thought about the first time I ever told someone outside the family what happened. I was 22. Working the night shift at a diner, wiping down counters after the last customer left. The waitress next to me, Linda, with the chipped nail polish and the voice like gravel, asked me why I never talked about my parents. I told her they were distant. She nodded like she understood. Then she said, "Some people don't leave because they're angry. They leave because they're afraid you'll see them for who they really are." I didn't answer, but I wrote it down on a napkin, kept it in my wallet for 10 years. That's what this is. Not a reunion, not a redemption arc. It's a reckoning disguised as a request. And I knew, before I even opened the envelope, that they didn't come because they missed me. They came because they needed what only I still had. The receipts, the records, the truth they buried under silence, under grief, under the carefully curated photo albums of a perfect family that never existed. I thought about all the people who have messaged me over the years, women in their 30s and 40s, mostly saying things like, "My dad kicked me out for speaking up. My mom told me I was too intense. I kept quiet because I thought love meant swallowing it. I used to reply with kindness, with encouragement, with "you're not alone." But I never told them the real truth. You're not alone because you're not the first, and you won't be the last. The real truth is that silence doesn't protect you. It just lets them keep doing it. So I made a decision right then, sitting there on the floor, the rain still tapping against the window like a Morse code only I could decode. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm not going to pretend I don't remember. I'm not going to let them rewrite the story with their version of forgiveness. I'm going to tell it exactly as it happened, every email, every signature, every moment they thought I forgot. I reached for my phone, opened YouTube, hit record. The camera blinked red. I didn't smile, didn't soften my voice, didn't beg for sympathy. I just looked into the lens, straight, steady, and said, "If you've ever been told you're too emotional for wanting the truth, if you've been called dramatic for asking for what's yours, if you've been erased by the people who were supposed to love you most, comment, 'I see you,' below." I paused. Then quieter. This isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when the people who broke you finally need what only you still hold. I stopped recording. The room felt different. Not lighter, but clearer. Like the fog had lifted, not because the storm was over, but because I'd finally stopped running from it. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for being awake. The house I grew up in had windows, real ones, not the flimsy vinyl replacements they put in later, and they didn't just let in light. They let in the rhythm of the seasons like a heartbeat. In spring, the maple outside the kitchen window bloomed in bursts of pink, so soft it looked like someone had brushed the air with watercolor. In summer, the glass would fog slightly in the mornings, and I'd press my forehead to it, watching the dew slide down like slow tears. In autumn, the leaves piled up in drifts against the porch steps, and my father would rake them into neat, obedient rows, never letting one stray, never letting anything be messy. And in winter, when the cold seeped through the old frames and the heat barely kept up, he'd shut them all. Tight, not just the curtains, the blinds, the locks. Even the cracks between the sashes, he'd seal with that cheap white tape he bought at the hardware store. For efficiency, he'd say. But I always knew the truth. The windows weren't for letting in the world. They were for keeping it out. And the study, the locked study, was where he kept the things he couldn't bear to let anyone see. I was 7 when I first saw him open it. I'd been looking for my missing sock, blue with the little duck on the heel, and I found the key under his pillow, tucked into the seam of his sock drawer like a secret weapon. I didn't take it. Not then. But I remembered where it was. And I remembered how he'd stand in front of that door for hours after dinner, the light under it glowing like a furnace, his voice low and tight, murmuring into the phone like he was bargaining with someone who wasn't there. Years later, when I was 16 and finally bold enough to sneak in after he'd passed out on the couch, I found the room like a shrine to a man who'd built his identity on lies. There were the ledgers, thick leather-bound, the kind you see in old movies about bankers and bootleggers. But these weren't for taxes. They were for adjustments. Notes in his handwriting. Disbursed $18K to contractor J. Rivera. No paper trail. Daughter's college fund redirected to vacation home. No one needs to know. If she asks, say she's too young to understand. There were photos, not of vacations or birthdays, of people, women mostly, names scribbled beside them, dates, amounts. One photo showed a woman in a hospital gown holding a baby. The caption, "She doesn't know, don't let her." And then there was the photo of me. The one I thought had been lost. It was tucked behind a loose panel in the bookshelf, behind a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird *, the book I'd begged him to read to me when I was 8, the one he'd promised to read every night until I fell asleep. I'd cried the night he stopped, said he was too tired. Now I knew why. The photo was from my 8th birthday. I was wearing a yellow dress I'd picked out myself, holding a cake with 7 candles, grinning like the world was made of sugar and sunshine. He was beside me, arm around my shoulders, smiling like he meant it. But the date on the back, 3 days after he'd wired $40,000 to an offshore account under the name J. Rivera. 3 days after he'd lied to my mother and told her the money was for business expansion. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. With recognition. Because I realized he didn't throw me out because I was angry. He threw me out because I was the only one who saw him before the mask. I saw him the night he cried after the bank called about the overdraft. I saw him the morning he pretended to be sick so he wouldn't have to go to the PTA meeting. I saw him when he told me, "You're too much," not because I was loud, but because I was present. And that scared him more than any debt. More than any scandal. Because I was the living, breathing proof that his carefully constructed world was built on sand. And when I found that photo, I didn't take it. I didn't burn it. I left it exactly where it was. Because I knew someday he'd need to face it. Someday he'd have to look at the child he loved, and then look at the man he became. And when he did, he'd have to choose. Which version of me he wanted to believe. Which version of himself he was willing to live with. The windows in that house never opened again after I left. But in mine, I keep them wide open. Every morning. No matter the weather. Because some doors close. But the truth, it never stops knocking. I was 17 when I found out my father wasn't just dishonest, he was terrified. Not of getting caught. Not of prison. Of being seen. I didn't know it then. Not really. I just knew that the money wasn't going where he said it was. That the business trip to Chicago was really a weekend with a woman whose name he'd scribbled in the margin of a receipt, *L. Chen, 2 nights, 1-200 *. That the unexpected expense that ate up my college fund was actually a down payment on a condo he never told anyone about. I didn't understand the mechanics of embezzlement. I just knew the numbers didn't add up. And when I asked him, quietly one night after dinner, while he was staring at his untouched plate like it might vanish, he didn't yell. He didn't even look at me. He just said, "You don't know what you're talking about." And then he walked away. But I kept looking. I started saving everything. The bank alerts I got on my phone when transfers went through. The emails I found in his trash can, deleted but recoverable, about adjusting liabilities. The time I overheard him on the phone with his accountant. "She's got no proof. She's emotional. She'll forget." I wrote it all down. In a notebook I hid under the floorboard beside my bed, the same one where I'd kept my diary when I was 10, filled with drawings of castles and princesses who lived in houses with no locks. I thought if I just had enough evidence, he'd stop. That if I showed him the truth, he'd see himself in it. That love would be stronger than fear. I was wrong. The night he threw me out, I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stood there in the cold, holding my suitcase, my backpack slung over one shoulder, and watched him through the cracked door. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say I was a mistake. He just turned to my mother and said, "You need to help him understand this isn't about money. It's about loyalty." And she nodded. She always nodded. She'd been nodding for years, through the missed birthdays, the lies about overtime, the way she'd smile too wide at family dinners when he'd say something cruel and no one else dared to react. She didn't speak up because she believed the lie, that if she stayed quiet, the house wouldn't fall, that if she swallowed it, I'd be safe. But I wasn't safe. I was alone. And I was furious. Not at him, for the lies, for the betrayal, for the stolen future. I was furious at her. Because she knew. She knew *. And she let it happen. I left with nothing but the clothes on my back, the notebook under my arm, and a single flash drive I'd copied from his computer the week before, a folder labeled *, final reconciliation notes, that contained scanned copies of forged signatures, wire transfer confirmations, and a voice memo from him, recorded accidentally during a Zoom call, saying, "If she ever tries to come back, tell her she's not family anymore. I've already changed the will." I slept in my car for 3 weeks. I washed my face in gas station sinks. I ate peanut butter sandwiches out of a Ziploc bag. I took every shift I could find, dishwasher, night clerk, tutor for kids who didn't know their own worth either. And every night, I opened the notebook. I wrote down every detail. The date. The amount. The lie. The name of the person he lied to. And then I wrote what I felt. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to. And if no one else remembers what he did, I will. I didn't tell anyone, not my teachers, not my friends, not the social worker who tried to help me find shelter. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to be the girl with the sad story. I wanted to be the girl who survived it. And I did. I got into college on a scholarship. I graduated with honors. I built a life that didn't need his name on it. I bought this house with cash. I named it the Quiet House because it didn't shout. It didn't demand. It just held space. For me. For the truth. For the silence I'd spent 15 years learning to carry. And sometimes, when I'm alone in the kitchen at night, I'll open the drawer where I keep the notebook. I'll flip through the pages. The handwriting gets messier toward the end, the ink smudged, the lines uneven, because those were the nights I cried while writing. But I never stopped. Because I knew. Somewhere, someday, he'd need to see it. Not to apologize. Not to beg. But because the truth doesn't fade. It waits. And when the person who buried it finally has nowhere left to run, it's the only thing left standing. And it's always been mine. She came to me the week before she died, not with flowers, not with hugs, not with the kind of tenderness people expect from grandmothers on their deathbeds. She came with a key. And a look. The kind of look that doesn't ask for permission. It demands you remember. I was sitting beside her in the hospice room, holding her hand, her skin thin as parchment, veins tracing blue rivers beneath it, and the machines around us breathed for her. The nurses had left. The TV was off. The only sound was the quiet hiss of oxygen and the distant hum of the hallway lights. She didn't open her eyes right away. I thought she was sleeping. Then slowly, her fingers tightened around mine. Not weak. Not frail. Purposeful. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper scraped raw from years of silence, but clear as glass. "You didn't think I knew," she said. I froze. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know if she meant the money, the lies, the way my father had looked at me the night he threw me out, as if I were the infection, not the illness. She didn't wait for me to speak. "I watched you," she said. "Every day, from the moment you were born, I saw how you looked at him, not with fear, not with anger, with asterisk witnessing asterisk." She paused, breathed. "Then, you didn't cry when he left you. That's what scared me most." I swallowed. My throat felt like sand. "I didn't cry because I knew," I whispered. "I knew he wasn't done." She smiled, just slightly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes but settles into the soul. "He thought he was protecting the family," she said, "but he was protecting himself, from you." She shifted slightly, wincing as the pain caught up with her. Then, with surprising strength, she reached beneath the pillow beside her and pulled out a small, flat key. It was old, brass, the kind that fits a safety deposit box, not a house, not a car, something hidden, something sacred. "This," she said, pressing it into my palm, "was your mother." I blinked. She never told me she had one. "She didn't tell anyone," my grandmother said. "Not even him, not even me, not until the day she found out he'd taken your college fund. She came to me, sat right where you're sitting, and she said, 'I'm not strong enough to stop him, but maybe she is.'" She paused, her breath rattled. "She opened the box the day after he threw you out. Took out what she could, put the rest back, then she sealed it, and she made me promise asterisk, to give it to you when the time came." I looked down at the key. It was warm from her hand. "I didn't know she kept anything," I whispered. "She kept you asterisk," my grandmother said, "and she kept the truth." She closed her eyes then, not to sleep, to gather. And when she spoke again, it was softer, almost like she was telling me a secret she'd carried for 60 years. "There's a letter," she said. In the box, from her, dated the week before she died. She wrote it after she found out she was sick. She knew he'd come for you someday. She knew he'd need you to fix what he broke. Her voice cracked. She didn't write it to forgive him. She wrote it so you wouldn't have to. I didn't cry. Not then. But I held the key like it was the last thread holding me to the person I used to be. The girl who believed in love, in fairness, in the quiet strength of a mother who never raised her voice but never stopped fighting. The next morning, my grandmother was gone. No fanfare. No final words. Just the quiet click of a machine going still. And in my pocket, the key. I didn't open the box that day. I didn't open it for weeks. I carried it with me everywhere. In my purse. In my coat. In the drawer beside my bed. I'd hold it at night, like a talisman. And I'd think about my mother. Not as the woman who stayed silent, but as the woman who hid, who buried her courage in a safety deposit box, who trusted her daughter more than her husband, who, even in death, chose me over him. The day I finally went to the bank, I wore the same blue dress I'd worn to my high school graduation. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I didn't bring a lawyer. I didn't need one. Because I wasn't there to claim money. I was there to claim truth. The box was in aisle 3, row 7, slot 14. The clerk didn't ask questions. He just handed me the key. And I turned it. The lock clicked. Not like a door opening. Like a soul exhaling. Inside, 3 things. A manila envelope. A small velvet pouch. And a single photograph. The envelope was addressed to me. In my mother's handwriting. For my daughter, who saw it all. I didn't open it in the bank. I didn't open it in my car. I waited until I got home. Until the rain started again. Until the house was quiet. And then I sat on the floor, just like I did the night my father came knocking, and I opened it. The first page said, "I never told you how proud I was of you. Not because you were smart, not because you were strong, but because you never stopped seeing the truth, even when it hurt. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder. I'm sorry I let him make you small. But I'm not sorry I raised you to be the kind of woman who doesn't need his permission to be whole. The pouch, it's your grandmother's wedding ring. I took it from him the night he tried to sell the house without my signature. I hid it so he'd never know it was gone. And the photo, that's you, age 8, the one he kept in the study. I took it from him the day he threw you out. I kept it because I knew, someday, you'd need to remember who you were before he tried to erase you. You were never the problem. He was. And now, it's your turn to decide what happens next." I held the ring in my hand. Tiny, delicate. A circle of gold. A promise. A rebellion. I slipped it onto my finger. It fit. Not because I was meant to wear it, but because I was meant to remember asterisk. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, and I watched the rain. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel alone. I felt seen asterisk. By her. By my grandmother. By the quiet, fierce woman who loved me enough to hide the truth, so I could find it when I was ready. And I knew. This wasn't just about justice. It was about legacy. And I was ready to carry it. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even loud. It was just an email. A single, unremarkable message from my father's old company payroll portal, sent to his personal account on October 12th, 2009, at 11:43 p.m., 2 days after I told him I knew about the money. Subject line, "Final adjustment for C. Carter, approved." I didn't find it because I was hunting. I found it because I was cleaning out my old laptop, a relic from college, dusty and slow, the kind you keep because you might need it someday. I turned it on for the first time in years just to see if the battery still held a charge. The screen flickered, the fan wheezed, And then, like a ghost rising from a forgotten drawer, the old browser history popped up, unlocked, unsaved, untouched since 2010. I didn't mean to click on it. I didn't even know I'd saved it. But there it was. The email. And beneath it, a PDF attachment. Payroll adjustment, C. Carter, final. I opened it. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a correction. It was an asterisk erasure. My name, asterisk Catherine Carter, asterisk, had been listed as a dependent on his company's health plan since I was 12. It was the only insurance I had after he cut me off. And in that document, dated 2 days after I confronted him, someone had changed the status. From dependent active to dependent terminated due to family disassociation. There was no signature. No notice. No legal form. Just a checkbox clicked. And beneath it, a single line of text in the notes field. Per verbal instruction from primary holder. No documentation required. I stared at it. I read it again. Then again. It wasn't just fraud. It was asterisk premeditated. He didn't just throw me out that night. He spent weeks planning it. He didn't just cut me off emotionally. He cut me off legally. He didn't just lie to me. He lied to the system, to the law, to every institution that was supposed to protect me. And he did it quietly, with a mouse click, while I was sleeping in my car, while I was crying into a pillow stuffed with socks because I couldn't afford a new one, while I was wondering if I'd ever be enough. I printed it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat at my kitchen table, in the pale light of dawn, holding the paper like it was the last breath of someone I loved. I took a photo of it. Then I took another. Then I took a third, with my phone's timestamp on. And I saved them all. In a folder I'd created years ago, back when I was still a girl with a notebook and a stubborn heart. I called it The Day He Tried to Make Me Disappear. I didn't tell anyone. Not then. I didn't need to. Because I knew this wasn't proof of a lie. This was proof of an asterisk pattern. The same man who forged signatures on bank forms, who stole from his own company, who erased his daughter from his life like a typo, had also erased me from the system, from the records, from the safety nets. And he thought he'd won. Because no one else saw it. Because no one else checked. Because I was just a girl who cried too much. But I had the timestamp. I had the printout. I had the email header that showed it came from his asterisk computer. And I had the memory of his voice, the night he said, "You're not my daughter anymore." I realized then he didn't just want to get rid of me. He wanted to make sure no one else would ever believe I existed asterisk. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about the house, or the money, or even the will. This was about asterisk visibility, about whether the world would let him pretend I was never there. And if I let him win that, then I'd become the ghost he wanted me to be. So I didn't delete it. I didn't hide it. I made 3 copies. 1 on a flash drive. 1 in the cloud. 1 printed, laminated, tucked into the spine of my mother's favorite book, asterisk, the bell jar asterisk, the one she left me when she died, with a note on the inside cover. Sometimes silence is the loudest scream. I kept it with me. Everywhere. In my bag. In my desk. In the drawer beside my bed. I didn't show it to anyone. Not even my therapist. Because I didn't need validation. I needed certainty asterisk. That the truth wasn't fragile. That it didn't vanish when people looked away. That it could live, quiet, unassuming, waiting, in the corner of an old laptop, in the margins of a payroll form, in the hollow of a daughter's chest. And when the time came, when the man who tried to make me disappear finally needed me to remember, I'd be ready. Not with rage. Not with tears. but with proof. Cold. Clean. Undeniable. And I'd hand it to him, not as a weapon, but as a mirror, so he could finally see what he'd done. Not to me. To himself. I didn't know then that the email would be the first domino, that it would lead to the bank records, the notarized letter, the video, the audit, the courtroom. But I knew this. The moment I printed that page, I stopped being the girl he threw out and became the woman who refused to be erased. And that was the real beginning. Not the knock on the door, not the envelope, not even the key. This, right here, a single, silent digital ghost, rising from the past, to say, I was here, I am still here, and you can't unsee me. He showed up again 2 weeks later, not at my door this time, but at my office. I was in the middle of a Zoom call with a client explaining how to structure a nonprofit trust for elderly guardianship when my assistant tapped on the glass door. Her face was pale. "There's a man here," she whispered. "Says he's your father, says it's urgent." I didn't move. I didn't look up. I just kept speaking, calm, measured, professional, about fiduciary duty and beneficiary designations, like I was teaching a class on the weather. When I finished, I ended the call. Silence. Then I stood, walked to the door, opened it. There he was. Not in his old work coat, not in the khakis he wore to church. He was dressed in a too-tight suit, the kind you rent for funerals or court appearances. His hair was dyed, dark, uneven at the roots. He looked like a man trying to look like someone who still had control. Beside him stood his wife, Linda. I learned her name later, her hands clasped tight in front of her, eyes darting everywhere but at me. And behind them, a man in a charcoal suit I didn't recognize, thin, sharp-eyed, holding a leather briefcase like it contained the last of his dignity. I didn't invite them in. I didn't offer coffee. I just leaned against the doorframe and said, "What do you want?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at my office, my framed degrees on the wall, the plants I'd nurtured for years, the photo of my niece on the shelf, smiling in her graduation gown. He looked like he was trying to reconcile the woman standing before him with the girl he'd thrown into the cold. "I need to talk to you," he finally said. "Alone." I didn't move. "I'm not your daughter anymore," I said, "so you don't get to ask for privacy, not anymore." He flinched. Linda stepped forward, voice trembling. "We just want to make things right. We've been through so much. He's sick. He's scared. He just wants to." "To what?" I interrupted. "To fix it or to fix himself?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, we've prepared a draft of a revised estate plan. Your father wishes to amend his will to include you as a beneficiary. He's offering you a portion of the estate, 20%, on the condition that you sign a full confidentiality agreement and agree to cease all legal inquiries into his past conduct." I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just looked at him. "You're offering me 20%, I said slowly, "in exchange for silence about the embezzlement, the forged signatures, the stolen college fund, the termination of my health insurance, and the fact that you lied to the court when you claimed I abandoned my mother." He didn't blink. "Is that accurate?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "and you know it is." The lawyer shifted. "We're prepared to make this generous, more than most would expect." I looked at my father. "You're not offering me money," I said. "You're offering me a burial." He looked away. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about redemption. It was about damage control. He wasn't afraid of the law. He was afraid of the truth. And he was terrified that if I spoke, really spoke, not just to him but to the world, he'd lose everything. Not his money. His reputation. His legacy. The carefully curated image of the pillar of the community, the devoted husband, the loving father. He didn't want to be forgiven. He wanted to be forgotten. And he thought if he gave me a crumb, a sliver of the fortune he stole, I'd swallow it and go quiet. I reached into my desk drawer, took out the printed email, the one from 2009, the payroll termination, held it up. "You think I don't have this?" I asked. He paled. Linda gasped. The lawyer stiffened. "I have more," I said. "Every bank transfer, every forged signature, every voicemail you left telling your accountant to handle her quietly. I have the video of me at 16, begging you not to cut me off. I have the letter from my mother, written the week before she died, saying she knew all along." I stepped closer. Not threatening. Not angry. Just present. "I don't want your money." He looked up, startled. "I don't want your apology." He blinked. "I don't want you in my life." I paused. Then softly, "I want you to understand, what you did wasn't just cruel." I held the paper tighter. It was an asterisk erasure asterisk. And then I said the thing I'd spent 15 years waiting to say. "You didn't just throw me out. I was already gone. Before you even opened the door." I turned, walked back to my desk, sat down, didn't look at them, didn't say goodbye. I just opened my laptop and started typing. A new email to the State Attorney General's office. Subject line: formal complaint regarding fraudulent payroll termination and potential embezzlement involving C. Carter, former executive, Evergreen Financial Services. I hit send, and then I looked up. And for the first time since I was 17, I didn't feel like I needed to prove I was real, because I already had. And they just watched me do it, without raising my voice, without crying, without begging, just standing, in my own space, in my own truth. And they couldn't take that, because it wasn't theirs to give. It was mine to keep, and I wasn't going to give it back. Not for money, not for peace, not even for him. I had already won. The moment I stopped asking for his permission to exist, the moment I stopped waiting for him to see me, I became the woman he could never unmake. And that was the only victory that mattered. I didn't go to the bank alone. I didn't want to. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed someone who had seen the whole story, someone who remembered the before, the during, and the quiet, aching after. So I called Mr. Delaney, my grandmother's lawyer, the same man who had helped her draft her will in 2012, the one that left me her small cottage and the contents of her safety deposit box, the box that held my mother's ring, the letter, and the truth. He didn't answer his phone right away. I left a message. Just 3 words: "It's time." He called back an hour later. "You've been waiting for this," he said. Not a question, a statement. "I have," I said. "Then I'll be there." He arrived at 10:17 a.m. exactly. Wore his gray wool coat, the one with the frayed cuff he'd had since law school. Carried a briefcase that smelled like leather and old paper. Didn't hug me, didn't ask how I was, just nodded once and said, "Let's go." We drove in silence. The bank was the same one my father had used for 30 years. The one with the marble floors and the security guards who knew his name. The one where he'd opened my college account, then closed it without telling me. We walked in. No fanfare. No announcement. Just 2 people, one in a tailored coat, one in a simple sweater and jeans. The manager, a woman named Diane, had been there since 2005. She remembered my father, remembered the way he'd come in every month, always with a smile, always with a gift for the tellers, chocolates sometimes, or a gift card for coffee. He was the kind of man who made people feel important. She didn't remember me. Not until Mr. Delaney said, "This is Catherine Carter, the daughter you were never supposed to know existed." Diane froze. Her smile faded. She looked at me, really looked. And then she whispered, "Oh." That was all. Just "oh." But it carried everything. The guilt. The regret. The dawning horror. We didn't go to the lobby. We went to the private conference room, the one with the reinforced door and the glass walls that let you see out, but not in. Diane closed the door, sat down, and said, "What do you need?" I handed her the email, the payroll termination, the timestamped printout. Then I handed her the copy of the original health insurance enrollment form, dated 2001, signed by my father, with my name, my SSN, my birth date. Then I handed her the bank statement from October 14th, 2009, the day after the email was sent. The one that showed a $12,000 transfer from my college fund into an account under the name *J, Rivera *. The same name from the receipt I'd found in his trash. Mr. Delaney didn't speak. He just sat there, quiet, solid, like a rock in a river. Diane read everything. Slowly. Then she looked at me. "You're the girl," she said. "The one who used to come in with him. The one who'd sit in the corner and color while he talked to the loan officer." I nodded. "I was 12. "You never said a word," she said. "Not once." "I didn't need to," I said. "I was watching." She swallowed. Then she opened her laptop, typed in my father's account number, ran a trace. The screen lit up. And then she froze. Again. Her hands shook. She looked at Mr. Delaney. He never told us." "Tell us what?" he asked. She turned the screen toward us. There, in bold red letters, was a flag. "Suspicious activity, fraudulent asset transfer." Beneath it, multiple transactions between 2007-2010, originating from account 8812, routed through offshore shell entities. Beneficiary, J. Rivera. Primary account holder, Charles Carter. Associated beneficiary, Catherine Carter, terminated 10/12/2009. She looked at me. "You were the beneficiary," she whispered. "For 8 years, he never told us you were his daughter." I didn't answer. I just looked at the screen. And I thought about the time I was 12, sitting in this very room, coloring a picture of a house with windows wide open. My father had been talking to the loan officer about refinancing. He said, "I want to make sure my daughter's future is secure." I'd looked up from my paper, smiled, because I believed him. And now I saw the truth. He hadn't been securing my future. He'd been masking his theft. He'd been using me as a shield, a cover, a way to make the fraud look legitimate. Because who would suspect a father stealing from his own daughter's college fund? Who would question a man who claimed to be doing right by his family? No one. Not the bank. Not the accountant. Not even my mother. And now the bank had proof. Not just of theft, but of deception. Diane stood up, walked to the door, opened it, and called in 2 people I hadn't seen since the day I was thrown out. The head of compliance and the regional fraud investigator. They didn't say hello, didn't offer condolences, didn't ask if I was okay. They just sat down. One opened a tablet. The other pulled out a recorder. And then the investigator said, "Ms. Carter, we're initiating a formal review of Charles Carter's accounts from 2007 to 2010. We need your full cooperation." I nodded. "I'm ready." Then he asked, "Do you have any other documents?" I reached into my bag, took out the USB drive, plugged it in, pressed play. The video began. It was me, age 16, sitting on my bed, holding a letter, trembling, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know how to fix this," I said, voice breaking, I love him, but I can't pretend anymore. He's stealing. He's lying. And if I say something, he'll hate me, but if I don't, I'll hate myself. The room went silent. The investigator paused the video. Looked at me. You recorded this, he asked. I didn't know I had, I said. I found it on his old computer. He recorded it by accident. I think he was trying to document my emotional instability for his lawyer. The compliance officer leaned forward. This is a criminal act, he said. Fraud, identity theft, tampering with fiduciary records, and this video, it's corroborating evidence of motive. Diane sat down. Her face was wet. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I looked at her. No, I said, you didn't need to. I looked at Mr. Delaney. He gave me the smallest nod. Then I turned back to the investigator. I'm not here to destroy him. I paused. Let the silence settle. I'm here to make sure no one else is erased like I was. The investigator closed his notebook. Looked at me. And for the first time since I was 17, I felt seen. Not as a victim. Not as a daughter. Not as a girl who cried too much. But as a witness. A keeper of truth. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about justice. It was about asterisk recognition. About saying, out loud, in the quietest room of the most trusted institution, I was here. I was real. And you tried to make me disappear. But you failed. Because I didn't just survive. I kept the receipts. And now the bank had them too. And that was the beginning of the end. For him. Not because he'd be arrested. Not because he'd lose his money. But because, for the first time, the world would know. Not the story he told, but the one I lived. And I wasn't going to let him write the ending. I was. I didn't plan it. I didn't rehearse. I didn't even tell anyone I was doing it. I just woke up one morning, the same morning the bank sent the formal notice of investigation to my father's home, and I looked out the window. The lilacs were blooming. Purple, wild, unapologetic. They'd been planted by my grandmother the year before she died. They don't need much, she'd said, just sun and time and someone who won't cut them down. I walked outside barefoot, the dew cold on my toes, and I stood there, just breathing. And I thought, this is the day. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to hurt him. But because I was done pretending that silence was peace. I called my niece. She was 12, sharp, quiet, had her mother's eyes. Can you come over? I asked. Why? She said. Because I need you to be there. She came. Wore her favorite hoodie, carried her sketchbook. We didn't talk on the way. I just drove. And when we got to the house, the one he still owned, the one with the white shutters and the perfectly trimmed hedges, I didn't go inside. I waited. Until 11:47 a.m. Then I saw them. My father. Linda. His lawyer. And his cousin, the one who had always been his mouthpiece, the one who'd told me at my mother's funeral, she was weak. You inherited her weakness. They walked up the path like they were arriving for a wedding. Smiling. Nodding. As if they were the ones who had been wronged. I stood on the porch. In my mother's wedding ring. In the same blue dress I'd worn to my graduation. In the silence that had taken 15 years to build. I didn't say hello. I didn't invite them in. I just held up the envelope. The one the bank had sent. The one that said, asterisk formal notice of fraud investigation initiated against Charles Carter. Then I turned to my niece. Read it, I said. She looked at me. Confused. Out loud, I said. She hesitated. Then softly, I don't know if I should. You should, I said. And she did. Her voice was small at first. Then it grew. Clear. Unshaken. She read the first line. This letter serves as official notice that the State Financial Crimes Unit has initiated a formal investigation into allegations of embezzlement, fraudulent documentation, and unlawful termination of beneficiary status involving Charles Carter. The lawyer stepped forward. That's confidential. She kept reading. Including the unauthorized transfer of funds from the college savings account of Catherine Carter, dated October 12, 2009, and the falsification of payroll records to conceal said transfers. My father's face went white. Linda covered her mouth. The cousin took a step back. She didn't stop. She read the next page. The one listing the dates. The amounts. The names. The email. The bank records. The video. And then, quietly, like she was reading a poem she'd memorized, she said, "The beneficiary, Catherine Carter, was never informed of the termination of her account. She was not notified. She was not consulted. She was not even told she was being removed from her own future." She looked up. At my father. Her eyes, so like my mother's, didn't flinch. "They said you were a good man," she said. "They said you were strong. They said you loved your family." She paused. Then softer. "But I looked at the paper, and I looked at you, and I don't see a good man." Silence. The kind that doesn't break. It cracks. The lawyer tried to speak. I cut him off. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I said. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for you to come to my house. I'm not asking for you to call me daughter." I took a step down from the porch. Closer. So he could see the ring on my finger. So he could see the lilacs behind me. So he could see the girl he threw out, now standing in her own light. "I'm asking you to listen." I turned to the neighbors. The ones who'd waved at him every morning. The ones who'd brought casseroles when my mother was sick. The ones who'd whispered, "He's such a pillar," when they thought I couldn't hear. There were 5 of them, standing on their porches, watching. One held a coffee mug. Another had her hands on her hips. They hadn't known, but now they did. I looked at them, then back at him. "I'm asking you," I said, "to hear what your daughter had to say before you erased her." I turned to my niece. "Read the last part," I said. She did. "The beneficiary has retained legal counsel and possesses documented evidence of all transactions, communications, and emotional harm. This investigation is not closed. It is only beginning." She closed the envelope, looked at him, and said simply, "I hope you're proud of yourself." He didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even blink. He just stood there, like a man who'd spent his whole life building a house, and just realized, too late, that every brick was made of lies. The lawyer stepped forward again. "This is inappropriate," he said. "No," I said, "it's justice." I turned to the neighbors. "Thank you," I said, "for listening." I walked back inside, closed the door, left them standing there, on my porch, in the sun, with the truth, and the silence. I didn't go to the police. I didn't file a lawsuit. I didn't post it online. I didn't need to, because I didn't need them to believe me. I needed them to believe themselves. The neighbors, the bank, the world. Because the moment they heard it, the moment they saw the daughter they'd never known, they had to choose to believe the man they thought they knew, or the girl who had been quietly, relentlessly, their asterisk. And I knew they'd choose her, because she was real. And he was just a story, one that had run out of pages. I sat down on the floor, in the kitchen, where I used to eat my cereal when I was 7, and I held my niece close. She didn't say anything, just rested her head on my shoulder. And I whispered, "You didn't just read a letter. You reminded everyone what truth looks like." And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove I was alive. Because I wasn't just alive. I was witnessed. And that was the most powerful thing I'd ever done. Not because I hurt him, but because I made them see. And once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. And he'd have to live with that. Every day. For the rest of his life. Not in prison. Not in shame. But in the quiet. The terrible, echoing quiet. Of knowing that the person he tried to erase was the only one who ever truly saw him. And she never forgot. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Not by mail. Not by courier. It was delivered by the county clerk herself, wearing a navy blazer, her hair pulled back in a bun, carrying a manila envelope sealed with red wax. She didn't smile, didn't offer coffee, just handed it to me with 2 fingers like it was a relic from a war no one else remembered. "Ms. Carter," she said, voice low, steady. "This is the official ruling on the fraud investigation. It's been reviewed by the State Attorney General's office, the Financial Crimes Unit, and the Probate Court. It's final." I took it. Didn't open it. Didn't thank her. Just nodded. She left. I sat at the kitchen table. The same one where I'd printed that first email. Where I'd held my mother's ring. Where I'd cried the night I found out my father had erased me. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit. For 3 hours. While the sun moved across the floor. While the lilacs outside swayed in the wind. While my niece played piano in the other room. Soft, hesitant notes. The same melody my mother used to hum when she was trying not to cry. I knew what was inside. I didn't need to read it to know. But I needed to see it. To hold it. To prove to myself, finally, that this wasn't a dream. That I hadn't imagined it. That the world hadn't just let me believe it. I opened it. The first page was a cover letter. From the Attorney General's office. It said, "After a comprehensive review of all documentation, including bank records, notarized correspondence, digital forensic evidence, and sworn testimony from third parties, the state of Vermont has determined that Charles Carter engaged in a sustained pattern of financial fraud, identity misrepresentation, and intentional deprivation of beneficiary rights. The termination of Catherine Carter's college fund and health insurance was not a clerical error, but a deliberate act of economic and emotional coercion. The forged signatures on the deed transfer and payroll documents are confirmed as fraudulent. All assets improperly transferred under false pretenses are hereby ordered restored to their original beneficiaries. No criminal charges will be filed at this time, as the primary objective of this proceeding was restitution and public accountability, not punishment." I exhaled. I didn't cry. I just kept reading. The second page was the court's ruling. The probate court finds that the estate of Alina Carter, deceased, was subject to undue influence and fraudulent misrepresentation by Charles Carter, who, as the primary caregiver and fiduciary, exploited his position of trust to alter legal documents without consent. The transfer of the family home, originally held in joint tenancy with right of survivorship between Alina and Charles, is nullified. The property reverts to the terms of Alina Carter's last valid will, dated March 14, 2010, which names Catherine Carter as sole beneficiary. All liens, encumbrances, or claims placed upon the property by Charles Carter after October 12, 2009, are void. The court further orders that Charles Carter shall immediately vacate the premises and surrender all keys, access codes, and documentation related to the property. I looked up. Out the window. At the house. The one with the lilacs. The one with the windows I kept open. The one I'd spent 15 years thinking I'd never own. I touched the paper. Felt the texture. The ink. The weight. It wasn't just paper. It was a resurrection. The third page was a list. A simple, clean list of everything that was restored. My college fund, $47,283.42 plus interest. The home clear title, deed recorded in my name as of 10:03 a.m. June 12, 2025. The health insurance claim, reinstated retroactively, with reimbursement for all medical costs incurred since 2009. The pension funds he'd redirected, $189,000, returned to the company trust. And then, at the bottom, a final line. The court notes that the petitioner, Catherine Carter, did not seek financial gain, retribution, or public spectacle. Her actions were driven solely by the pursuit of truth and the restoration of lawful rights. The court commends her restraint, dignity, and moral clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I didn't call anyone. I just stood up, walked to the front hall, to the coat rack, to the key hook. I took down the key I'd carried for 15 years. The one from my grandmother's safety deposit box. The one I'd worn on a chain around my neck. I held it in my hand. Then I walked to the door, opened it, stepped onto the porch, looked at the house. The same windows, the same lilacs. But now, they were mine. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just whispered, "Thank you, Mom." And then I walked back inside, took the letter, took the deed, took the key, and I put them all in a small wooden box, the one my grandmother had given me when I was 10. It had a brass latch, and inside, carved into the lid, "What is hidden will rise." I closed it, laid it on the shelf, next to the photo of me at 8, next to the lilac bloom I pressed between the pages of asterisk, the bell jar asterisk, next to the ring. And I didn't open it again, because I didn't need to. I knew it was there, and that was enough. That night, I didn't go to bed early. I sat in the living room, with the lights off, just me, the silence, the moonlight through the open windows. And I thought about all the people who told me to let it go, to forgive, to move on, to forget. I thought about the women who'd messaged me over the years, asterisk, "I wish I'd had the courage. I still carry the shame. I don't know how to start." And I realized, I didn't win because I got the house. I didn't win because I got the money. I won because I refused to let them bury me. I won because I kept the receipts. Because I didn't need their permission to be whole. Because I didn't need their love to be worthy. Because I had already loved myself enough to keep going. Even when no one else did. Even when no one else saw. Even when the world told me I was too much. Too loud. Too emotional. Too broken. Too late. I was just waiting. Waiting for the truth to catch up. And now it had. I stood up, walked to the window, opened it wider, let the night air in, let the scent of lilacs fill the room, and I whispered one last time, "I'm here, not to beg, not to blame, not to scream, just to say, I was here, and I never left. And now I'm home. Not because they gave it to me, but because I never stopped claiming it. And that was always the real victory. Not the letter, not the deed, not the money, but the quiet, unshakable knowing that I had survived, and that I would never again allow anyone to tell me I didn't deserve to be seen. Because I had seen myself. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. He didn't leave the house quietly. He left like a man who'd spent his life building a cathedral, and now, with one final breath, had to watch it crumble in slow motion. The movers came on a Thursday morning. 2 men in plain uniforms, silent, efficient, carrying boxes marked with numbers, not names. No photos, no mementos, just boxes, empty, cold, like the man who owned them. I watched from the kitchen window. He didn't come out to wave. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't even look up. He just stood on the porch, holding a single suitcase, his only bag, and waited for the car. Linda was inside, packing his shirts, folding his ties, putting his cufflinks in a velvet pouch like they were relics. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She moved like someone who'd been rehearsing this moment for years, quietly, meticulously, like she was preparing for a funeral she'd known was coming. The lawyer had already left. The bank had frozen his accounts. The community center had removed his name from the board. The church had sent a letter. We regret to inform you that your membership as a deacon has been suspended pending further review. He'd been stripped, not by law, not by prison, but by truth. And truth, unlike a judge's gavel, doesn't shout. It just removes. One by one. The people who once smiled at him. The invitations he once received. The respect he once wore like a suit. All gone. Not because I made them go, but because they finally saw. And once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. I didn't go to the door. I didn't want to. I didn't need to. I just opened the window. Let the lilacs breathe in. Let the morning light spill across the floor. And I waited. The movers finished. One of them paused at the foot of the stairs. Looked up. Saw me. Held my gaze. Didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just looked. And then he turned to my father. Sir, he said, voice quiet, we're done, you can come out now. My father didn't move. Just stood there. In the same gray coat he'd worn to the bank. The same shoes he'd polished every Sunday. His hands, once so steady, once so sure, were shaking. Linda came out then. Carried his coat. Held it out. He didn't take it. She tried again. He didn't move. Then, finally, he whispered, I didn't mean to lose her. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was raw. The kind of thing you only say when you know no one's listening. But I was. And I heard it. Linda looked at me. Tears in her eyes. Not for him. For me. She stepped forward. Catherine, she said, voice thin, I'm sorry. I didn't answer. I didn't say, I forgive you. I didn't say, it's okay. I didn't say anything. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give to the person who hurt you. It's a release you give to yourself. And I wasn't ready to release him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I just nodded. Once. And turned back to the window. She didn't push. She didn't beg. She just took his coat. Helped him into it. And they walked down the steps. The car idled. The movers stood back. And he stopped. Just for a second. At the bottom of the porch. Looked up. At the house. At the windows. At the lilacs blooming wild and unbound. And for the first time, I saw it. Not anger. Not spite. Not even grief. Just recognition. He saw the girl he'd thrown out. And he saw the woman she became. And for the first time, he knew. He hadn't just lost a daughter. He'd lost the one person who could have loved him. And he'd chosen to lose her. Instead, the car door opened. He didn't look at me again. He got in. The door closed. The car pulled away. I didn't watch it go. I stayed at the window. Until the dust settled. Until the silence returned. And then I walked to the front hall. To the key hook. To the one key I still kept. Not the one to the house. Not the one to the safe. But the one to the box, the wooden box, the one with the brass latch, the one that held the letter, the deed, the ring, the truth. I opened it, took out the key, held it in my palm. Then I walked to the front door, opened it, walked out, stood on the porch, and I dropped the key. Not into the dirt, not into the grass, but into the soil beneath the lilacs. The ones my grandmother planted, the ones my mother protected, the ones I had learned to love. I didn't bury it. I didn't hide it. I let it rest, just beneath the surface, where the roots could find it, where the wind could carry its weight, where the next generation, my niece, maybe, or someone else's daughter, might one day dig it up and wonder, who left this? Why? And what did they fight for? I didn't need him to know. I didn't need anyone to know. I just needed to know that I had chosen what to keep and what to let go. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, with the windows open, with the moonlight on the floor, and I thought about all the people who'd asked me, was it worth it? Was it worth the years of silence, the sleepless nights, the loneliness, the fear, the cost? I thought about the woman who'd sent me a message last week. I'm 42. My father threw me out when I was 19. I never told anyone. I'm still afraid to speak, but I read your story, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. I thought about my niece, humming that same melody my mother used to sing. I thought about my grandmother's voice, whispering, "They made you small so you, stay quiet, don't." And I realized, it wasn't about justice. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the house. It was about presence asterisk, about refusing to disappear, about saying with every breath, every step, every quiet act of reclaiming, I am here, and if you want to erase me, you'll have to erase the lilacs. You'll have to erase the wind. You'll have to erase the moonlight. You'll have to erase the truth. And you can't, because I didn't just survive. I became the ground he stood on. And now he's gone. And I'm still here, growing, blooming, unafraid. I didn't need to see him suffer. I didn't need to watch him fall. I just needed to know that I was still standing, and that I would never again let anyone tell me I wasn't enough. So I closed the door, locked it, not because I was afraid, but because I was free. And I walked back to the window, sat down, let the night in, and whispered, I'm not your daughter anymore. I didn't say it to him. I said it to myself. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt like home. I didn't move into the house right away. I didn't want to. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to remember what it meant to arrive asterisk, not as a daughter begging for permission, but as a woman claiming what was always hers. So I waited. I let the house breathe without me. I let the air clear. I let the dust settle, not from neglect, but from respect. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't open the curtains. I didn't touch the furniture. I just came every morning, sat on the porch, with my coffee, in the same blue sweater I wore the day I got the deed. And I watched the light change, the way it slipped through the maple leaves in the morning, how it pooled on the floor at noon, how it faded into gold at dusk. I thought about the last time I'd been inside. I was 16. My father had just thrown me out. I'd come back that night, just once, because I'd forgotten my journal. I'd slipped in through the back door, climbed the stairs like a ghost, walked into my room. The bed was made. My posters were gone. My books, everyone, had been taken. Even the stuffed rabbit I'd slept with since I was 5. Gone. I sat on the floor. Didn't cry. just pressed my palm to the wall, where I'd carved my initials, *C, asterisk, with a nail when I was 9. They were still there. Faint. Worn. But there. I traced them with my finger. And I whispered, "I'm still me." That was the last time I'd stepped inside. Until now. The day I finally walked in, I didn't bring a key. I didn't bring a box. I didn't bring a plan. I brought only the lilac branch I'd picked from the garden. And the key. The one I'd buried beneath the roots. I dug it up the night before. Held it in my hand. Let the dirt fall from it. Washed it in the sink. Let the water run until it was clean. Then I walked to the house. Turned the key. In the front door. It clicked. Not with resistance. Not with rust. But with ease. Like it had been waiting. I stepped inside. The air was cool. Still. The same scent, old wood beeswax, faint traces of his cologne, lingered, but it didn't choke me. It just was. I didn't turn on the lights. I let the moonlight guide me. Walked through the hallway. Past the study. The door was closed. I didn't open it. Not yet. I went to the kitchen. To the window. To the same spot where I stood as a child, watching rain slide down the glass. I placed the lilac branch in a jar. On the counter. Just like my grandmother used to do. Then I walked upstairs. To my old room. The door was still there. The handle, chipped from years of slamming. I turned it. Opened it. The room was empty. But not barren. It was waiting. Like a song paused. I walked to the wall. Ran my fingers over the spot where my initials had been. They were still there. I traced them again. And then I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I whispered, "I'm home." Not to him. Not to the past. Not even to myself. To the girl who lived here. The one who believed in love. The one who was afraid. The one who was brave. The one who never stopped believing she deserved to be here. I didn't sleep in the room that night. I slept on the floor. In the hallway. Just outside the door. Wrapped in a blanket. Under the moon. And I didn't dream. I just listened. To the house. To the wind. To the quiet. And I realized. This wasn't a house. It was a mirror. It didn't show me what I'd lost. It showed me what I'd kept. My courage. My silence. My truth. My love. I didn't need to fix it. I didn't need to redecorate. I didn't need to erase the past. I just needed to be in it. So I started small. I opened the windows. Every morning. I let the light in. I planted more lilacs. Along the fence. Behind the garage. Where the soil was thin. I didn't water them every day. I didn't fuss over them. I just let them grow. Just like I had. 1 year at a time. 1 breath at a time. 1 quiet choice. One morning, I found a note slipped under the door. From the neighbor across the street. A woman I'd never spoken to. It said, "I saw you planting those lilacs. I used to have a daughter. She left too. I didn't know why. Now I do. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't have to be loud to be real." I didn't reply. I just left a single lilac bloom on her porch. The next morning, it was gone. And in its place, a small hand-carved wooden key. On the back, engraved, "For the ones who keep the light on." I didn't cry. I just held it. And I knew. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. I didn't invite anyone over. Not yet. But I started leaving the door unlocked. Not because I was foolish, but because I was free. I didn't need to lock people out. I didn't need to guard the house. I just needed to live in it. And when my niece came over that summer, she didn't ask if she could stay. She just walked in, sat on the floor, looked up at the windows, looked at the lilacs, and said, "It smells like her." I didn't ask who she meant. I just sat beside her. And we didn't speak. We just sat. And when the wind blew through the open windows, and the lilacs swayed, I felt her, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a presence, like a song you didn't know you were humming, until you heard it again. That night, I took the wooden box, the one with the brass latch. I carried it to the center of the living room, opened it, took out the deed, the letter, the ring, the key. I didn't put them away. I didn't lock them up. I laid them on the table, and I lit a candle, just one, and I sat, and I whispered, "I kept you, not because I had to, not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to prove I was right, but because I loved myself enough to remember, and because I knew, if I forgot, someone else might too. So I didn't bury the past. I didn't burn it. I didn't hide it. I held it, gently, like a child, like a promise. And I said, I'm not your daughter anymore. I said it again, and again, until I didn't need to say it out loud, until I just knew asterisk. And when I finally went to bed, I didn't close the curtains. I didn't lock the door. I just let the moonlight fall across the floor. And I slept, not because I was safe, but because I was whole. And for the first time in 15 years, the house didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a home, because I had built it, not with money, not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth. And that was the only foundation that would never crack. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post a photo. I didn't send a letter. I didn't tell anyone I was moving in. I just woke up one morning, June 17th, 2025, and felt the sun on my face before I opened my eyes. It was the same light that had poured through the windows the day I was born. The same light that had warmed my shoulders when I was 7, sitting on the kitchen floor eating toast with the crusts cut off. The same light that had slipped through the blinds the night I cried myself to sleep after he threw me out. I sat up, didn't reach for my phone, didn't check the time, just looked out the window. The lilacs were in full bloom. Purple, thick, wild. They climbed the trellis like a promise made in silence. I walked outside barefoot. The grass was cool. The air smelled like earth and rain and something older, something like memory. I didn't go into the house. Not yet. I went to the back garden, to the spot where I'd buried the key. I knelt. Didn't dig. Just placed my palm on the soil, closed my eyes, and whispered, I'm here. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was reclaiming something. I felt like I was receiving it. Like the house had been waiting, not for me to return, but for me to remember who I was when I left. That afternoon, I invited my niece. She came with her sketchbook, her headphones, her quiet. We didn't talk much. She sat on the porch steps, drew the house, the windows, the lilacs. Then she turned the page and drew me, sitting in the same chair, wearing the same sweater, eyes closed, smiling. Not the kind of smile that's forced, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that comes from stillness, from peace, from knowing you've survived and you're still here. She didn't say anything, just handed me the drawing. On the back, in her small, careful handwriting, "This is where you belong." I held it, didn't cry, Didn't speak. Just tucked it into my pocket. And when she left, I walked through the house. One room at a time. I didn't rearrange anything. I didn't paint over the walls. I didn't throw out his things. I just opened the doors. Let the air in. Let the light touch everything. In the study, I didn't open the door. I just stood in front of it. For 10 minutes. Then I turned the knob. Opened it. The room was still. The desk was empty. The bookshelf still held the same books. To Kill a Mockingbird. The bell jar. The Little Prince. All there. I didn't take them. I didn't burn them. I just ran my fingers along the spines. And whispered, "Thank you for staying." I didn't go into the closet. I didn't touch the coat he left behind. I didn't need to. I knew what it was. A relic. A ghost. A lesson. So I left it. On the hanger. In the dark. Where it belonged. That night, I lit a candle. Sat in the center of the living room. On the floor. With the windows open. And I thought about all the people who'd asked me, "What now? What now?" Now I wake up. Now I make tea. Now I water the lilacs. Now I leave the door unlocked. Now I let the wind in. Now I don't flinch when I hear a knock. Now I don't wait for permission. Now I answer. Not with fear. Not with silence. But with presence. Because I'm not rebuilding my life. I'm remembering it. I'm not healing from the past. I'm living through it. And I'm not doing it alone. The neighbor across the street left a basket on my porch yesterday. Bread. Jam. A note. "You're not the first to come home, but you're the first who made the whole street feel like it could, too." My niece sent me a text this morning. "Can I come over Saturday? I want to learn how to plant lilacs." I wrote back, "Yes, bring your hands and your heart." I didn't tell my father. I didn't write to him. I didn't send a message. I didn't need to. Because he wasn't the one who had to know I was okay. I was. And that was enough. I didn't need him to see me. I needed to see myself. And I did. Every morning. In the light. In the quiet. In the way the lilacs bend, but don't break. In the way the windows stay open, even when it rains. In the way the key I buried beneath the soil still holds its shape. I didn't bury it to forget. I buried it to remember. That some things aren't meant to be carried. They're meant to be rooted. And when they grow, they don't ask for permission. They just bloom. And now, I'm blooming too. Not because I was forgiven. Not because I was given back. Not because I won. But because I chose to stay. To stand. To open the door. To let the light in. And to never, ever again let anyone tell me I didn't belong. Because I do. Not because of a deed. Not because of a court ruling. Not because of a letter. But because I kept walking. Even when the path disappeared. Even when the voices screamed. Even when the silence felt like it would swallow me whole. I kept walking. And here I am. Home. Not because I got it back. But because I never stopped believing I deserved it. And that was the only victory that ever mattered. I didn't need to scream it. I didn't need to prove it. I just needed to live it. And so I did. Every morning. Every breath. Every open window. Every lilac. Every quiet, unshakable, sacred moment. I am here. And I am home. And I will never leave again. I didn't host a dinner. I didn't invite relatives. I didn't send cards. I didn't post a photo with a caption like, "Home at last." I didn't need to. What I needed was silence. And presence. So I waited. Until the first true autumn day came, when the air turned crisp, when the light turned honey gold, when the wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke from far away. That morning, I woke before sunrise, lit a single candle, sat on the floor in the center of the living room, wore the same blue sweater I'd worn the day I got the deed. And I waited. Not for him. Not for forgiveness. Not for applause. I waited for the quiet to come. And it did. Just as it always does. When you stop running. When you stop begging. When you stop trying to make someone else see what you've always known. At 8:03 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not a knock. Not a rattle. A soft, deliberate ping asterisk. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just sat. And waited. It rang again. Then silence. Then footsteps. Slow. Familiar. The sound of someone who'd walked these halls before. I didn't look. I didn't need to. I knew. It was my niece. She came in without asking. Carried a thermos. 2 mugs. A small, wrapped bundle in her arms. She didn't say anything. Just set the thermos on the table. Poured 2 cups of tea, Earl Grey, just how my mother liked it. Then she sat beside me. On the floor. Cross-legged. Like we were children again. She didn't ask why I was sitting there. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just opened the bundle. Inside was a small wooden box. Identical to mine. Brass latch. Carved into the lid. What is hidden will rise. She looked at me. I made it, she said. I didn't speak. I just reached out. Took it. Opened it. Inside, a single lilac bloom. Pressed. A note. In her handwriting. For the woman who taught me that home isn't a place you're given. It's a place you choose to return to, again and again. Even when no one else believes you can. I closed the box. Held it to my chest. Didn't cry. But something inside me cracked open. Not with pain. With release. She leaned her head against my shoulder. And whispered, I'm proud of you. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say I loved you. I just turned my head. And kissed the top of hers. And we sat. Like that. For a long time. Until the sun climbed high. Until the tea grew cold. Until the candle burned down to a puddle of wax. Then she stood. Took my hand. Led me to the front door. Opened it. Let the morning in. And said, Come on. I followed. Outside. To the garden. To the spot beneath the lilacs. Where I'd buried the key. She didn't ask why. She just knelt. And took my hand. And we dug. Not with shovels. Not with tools. Just with our fingers. The soil was soft. The roots were tangled. And there it was. The key. Still there. Still whole. Still waiting. She picked it up. Wiped the dirt off. Held it out to me. I didn't take it. I looked at her. And said, Keep it. She blinked. Why? Because, I said, you're the one who knows how to carry it now. She didn't argue. Didn't refuse. Just slipped it into her pocket. Then she took my hand again. And we walked back inside. Not to the house. Not to the past. But to the kitchen. Where the windows were open. Where the lilacs swayed. Where the candle had burned out. Where the tea had gone cold. And where the silence, finally, wasn't empty. It was full. Full of her breath. Full of mine. Full of the wind. Full of the truth. We made tea again. This time, we drank it together. No words. Just warmth. Just presence. Just the quiet knowing that some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be passed, not as inheritance, not as obligation, but as invitation. To the next one, to the next girl, to the next quiet soul who's been told she's too much, too loud, too broken, too late. To the next one who's been told to forget, to forgive, to let go, to disappear. I didn't speak, but I didn't need to, because she knew. And she would carry it, not with anger, not with pain, but with grace, with quiet strength, with the same kind of love that doesn't shout, but stays, always. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, with the key she'd taken, with the box she'd made, with the tea still warm in my hands. And I thought about all the letters I'd received, all the DMs, all the comments. I didn't know I could do this. I thought I'd be alone forever. I'm going to open the box today. I thought about the woman who wrote, I kept my mother's wedding ring for 20 years. I didn't wear it. I didn't tell anyone. I just held it when I cried. Today I put it on for the first time. I felt her, and I felt me. I thought about my grandmother, my mother, my niece, and me. All of us. Women who were told to be small, to be quiet, to be grateful, to let it go. And we didn't. We held on. Not with fists, not with rage, but with hands, open, ready, to receive, to remember, to pass on. I looked out the window, at the lilacs, at the moon, at the open door, and I whispered, you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to be forgiven to be whole. You don't have to be believed by everyone to be true. And then, I said it one last time. Not to him, not to the past, not even to myself, but to the future, to the girl who hasn't been born yet, to the girl who's still hiding, to the girl who's still waiting. I'm here. I said it again, and again, until it wasn't a statement. It was a promise, a covenant, a quiet, unbreakable vow. To every girl who's ever been told she doesn't belong. You do. Not because someone gives it to you. Not because a court rules in your favor. Not because they apologize. But because you choose to come back. Again. And again. And again. And when you do, you don't just find home. You become it. And you leave the door open, so the next one can walk through. I closed the window, didn't lock it, didn't shut the curtains, just sat and listened to the wind, to the silence, to the quiet hum of a life lived, not in spite of the past, but because of it. I am not the daughter they threw out. I am the woman who came back, and I am not alone, because now, there are others, and they are coming, and they will find the door, and they will walk through, and they will know. They were always meant to be here, and so was I, and so are you. The door is open. The lilacs are blooming. The key. It's yours now. Take it, and come home. I don't need you to believe me. Not because I'm bitter. Not because I'm done, but because I've learned, finally, that truth doesn't beg for witnesses. It waits. It breathes. It lingers in the spaces between silence. In the way the lilacs lean toward the sun, even when no one's looking. In the way the key still fits the lock, even after 15 years of rust. In the way your heart still knows your own name, when the world has tried to take it. This story isn't about him. It never was. It was about the quiet women, the ones who have been told to shrink, to smile, to stay silent, to forgive before they've even been heard. It's about the daughters who were erased not with violence, but with a sigh, with a shrug, With a "you're too sensitive." With a "family is family." With a "let it go." I didn't write this for applause. I didn't write this to make him look small. I wrote it because I needed you to know. You don't need his permission to be whole. You don't need his apology to be free. You don't need his recognition to be real. You just need to remember that the first time you spoke up, you weren't being dramatic. You were being brave. That the first time you cried, you weren't being weak. You were being human. That the first time you kept the receipts, you weren't being obsessive. You were being a witness. And witnesses don't disappear. They become the light. I've been asked over and over, was it worth it? Was it worth the sleepless nights? The silence? The loneliness? The years of wondering if you were broken? Was it worth the cost? Yes. Because what I gained wasn't a house. It wasn't a bank account. It wasn't even justice. It was something deeper. It was the return of my own voice. The right to say, without shame, I was here. I saw it. I held on. I didn't let them win. And if you're watching this right now, if you're sitting in the dark, clutching your own stack of emails, your own hidden photos, your own unspoken truths, I see you. Not as a victim. Not as a daughter. Not as someone who needs fixing. I see you as the keeper. The archivist. The quiet rebel. The one who didn't scream, but didn't stop recording. The one who didn't fight back, but didn't stop standing. The one who didn't need an audience to know the truth. Because you knew it. And that's enough. You don't have to forgive him. You don't have to speak his name again. You don't have to go back. You don't have to heal on anyone's timeline. Heal in silence. Heal in secret. Heal slowly. Heal in pieces. Heal in the middle of the night, with your knees on the floor and your hands pressed to the wall where your initials are still carved. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to be seen to be real. You just have to keep showing up for yourself. And if you're ready to stop hiding your receipts, to stop apologizing for your truth, to stop believing you're too much, then here's what I want you to do. Go to the place you've been avoiding. The drawer. The folder. The box. The phone. The notebook. And open it. Not to relive the pain. Not to punish him. But to remember. You were there. You saw it. You survived it. And you're still here. Then, just once, write your name. On the first page. In ink. Not for him. Not for the court. Not for the world. For you. Because you deserve to be the author of your own story. And if you're not ready to speak, that's okay. Just leave a comment below. I'm still here. One word. That's all. No explanation. No story. Just that. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say you're still standing. And if you're ready to go further, I've linked a free, no fluff, no therapy jargon toolkit in the description. It's not a guide to revenge. It's not a script for confrontation. It's a map for reclaiming. Step by step. Receipt by receipt. Memory by memory. It's for the woman who's tired of being told to let go, but doesn't know how to hold on. It's for the girl who's afraid to open the door, but knows deep down she's the only one who can. I don't know what your next step is. I don't know if you'll ever speak to him again. I don't know if you'll ever move into that house. I don't know if you'll ever feel whole. But I know this. You've already done the hardest part. You didn't disappear. You didn't give up. You didn't let them bury you. And that was never about them. That was always about you. So tonight, when the house is quiet, when the lights are low, when the world thinks you're asleep, go to your window, Open it. Just a crack. Let the night air in. And whisper, I'm still here. Say it again. And again. Until it's not a whisper. Until it's a vow. Until it's the sound of your soul coming home. You don't need his approval. You don't need his forgiveness. You don't need his love. You just need to know. You were never the problem. You were the truth. And truth, it doesn't die. It doesn't fade. It doesn't need a courtroom. It doesn't need a stage. It just needs a woman. Quiet, resolute, unbroken, who remembers and keeps the light on so the next one can find her way. I'm not done. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm alive. And I'm still writing. And if you're reading this, you're part of the story now. So thank you for listening, for remembering, for not turning away, and for believing just a little that you too can come home. The door is open. The windows are too. The lilacs are blooming. And the key, it's always been yours. Now go. Take it. And walk through. You're not late. You're not too much. You're not broken. You're not alone. You're the one who kept the truth. And now, it's time to live it. I'll be here, waiting, with the light on, and the door open, for you, and the next one, and the one after that. We're not done. We're just getting started. And I'm proud of you. Not because you won, but because you never stopped being you. And that was always the real victory. Sleep well. The morning is coming. And you're already home.